Alright, response video to Matt. Yeah, it's been a long time. But anyway, I don't know if I can make anything out of this. He's talking on antinatalism, which is cool. He's doing a response video to Wayward Horizon guy, so maybe they'll have a conversation, and I don't want to get in the way of that in any way. I just thought for old time's sake I'd give it a shot, but, you know, Matt his philosophy is so obtuse from my perspective. It's just, there's nothing to hold on to here. There's nothing, it's not fact-based, it's emotion-based, it's completely momentum-based. You know, we're here, let's just make the best of it kind of thing, not think too much. Just shield your eyes from the dirty bits. So anyway, we're halfway through here, well, not quite. You know, he paraphrases antinatalism being some kind of nihilist philosophy, which I think is kind of bullshit. I think it's just not. I mean, it is in the sense that, yes, it understands the futility of life, in the sense that there's nothing, it's not serving a purpose independent of its own mess, its own dilemma. But, you know, nihilists are too easily discounting the meaning and substance of what's happening to us through this adventure we're on.
As universal, so is the act of birth. The universe has been, or at least I'll just start with the life on Earth for the last 4 billion years, has been, I submit to you, enjoying itself.
Right. So, I mean, that's okay to say, but I mean, you can, you know, that doesn't fix the problem. I mean, we're still stuck with a glass that's half something, right? I mean, it's got this enjoyment thing you're talking about, but we know what it's also got in it. So, I mean, it's just really kind of just lying about what's going on here to say, you know, gazelles enjoy being eaten by lions, or baby elephants like being eaten alive by lions, that they're enjoying themselves. I mean, it's just not the truth. So it's more complicated than that. I mean, it's not even that it's more complicated than that. It's that you should be willing to be more explicit than that. We know that this stuff comes in these forms, and we have this thing called desire, you know, attachment, addiction, and we have this thing called our welfare, our condition, you know, our state of being. And then our state of being is, you know, can be this sense of satisfaction when we gain what we want, what we desire, what we need, and this hard unpleasantness when we don't get what we need, when our body isn't healthy, and when things aren't right. And, you know, you just can't, I mean, you got to deal with those explicitly. You can't just use these fluffy cloud words to describe this stuff.
Immensely, because when you connect death with life and life with death, and you no longer consider them as separate things, such that the passage from life to death was some final tragic loss that could never be recovered. When you recognize that there's more of a circular...
Well, whatever. I mean, you know, who has to recognize that? All you have to do is say 4 billion years of evolution, or 3.5 billion, and then 500 million, let's say, of sentient life doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. That's right, just spawning, creating a new copy that's pretty much the same deal to live out the same kind of life at preposterous odds sometimes, 1,000 to 1 kind of odds of surviving, you know, especially in the ocean. I'll get back to the ocean. The ocean's a good subject. It's a good one of those context words, the ocean.
Death, rebirth, movement that's unfolding.
Movement unfolding. See, this is the kind of rhetoric that just doesn't go anywhere. What do I do with movement unfolding? What does that say to me? It's supposed to say, it's supposed to sing or something. It's movement unfolding. It just doesn't say anything to me at all.
You see that, you know, even if you did have the button to push that would end the entire biosphere, that would put an end to each creature's life which currently exists in this wheel of suffering, it would come back again. The universe...
Okay, so that's one of your statements of fact here, an argument. You're going to somehow substantiate that with something, some sort of evidence of the back coming. It didn't didn't start on Mars or Venus or any other planet that we know of. There's no evidence that it came here twice, that it started twice. So you're just making this statement that here's an argument that it's going to come back anyway, that you can't die, that life is zombie. It'll just keep digging its way out of the grave somehow. Are the Tyrannosauruses going to come back? Or are they really dead? Whatever.
I would submit to you is essentially a life-making operation and a soul-making operation.
So the universe is making life and making souls. And I don't know what the soul would be exactly, but whatever. But this idea that even if it was making life, how does that change the equation any? Even if it was a function of the universe, how do you tell this function? How do you know it's not just the universe pooping? I mean, how do you know that somehow it's a vital function, a useful function, that somehow it's a good function? And I would take you back to the ocean and so just explain to me how, with the mammals extracted, what is happening in the ocean that's just so frickin' beautiful? Exactly. I mean, the carnage is outrageous. The struggle is preposterous. You would press the button to initiate that? If you could put the ocean on Mars with the life in it the way it is, you'd press the button to do that to those animals? You'd put them in that circumstance? I mean, how many brains are squished or are horribly denied their blood supply every single second in that sea? Just care to ponder a guess?
Matter is dying to come to life. And so you blow up the earth, I'm sure that...
Sure, it's dying to come back to life. I mean, to come to life. I mean, it's just, use some real language.
There are billions of other planets in our galaxy.
Yeah, there really are billions. And yet, we can't make a living thing, but you think planets can. So we have a big giant brain, planets don't, but planets can make living things, and you somehow know they can do it. You're sure they can do it. Because it happened here, even though you don't know how it happened here, or you don't have any evidence that it's common chemistry. No evidence whatsoever that it's common chemistry, just a lot of evidence saying that it's not common chemistry, that it's preposterously bizarre chemistry, replication. You're just going to say it like it's just so obvious it must exist. So that's what philosophers should do, is just make something up, like that is a premise. Here's my premise. I'm going to defy statistical probability, which basically says from one sample you can deduce nothing about probability. All you can say is how unlikely something is. You can't say anything about likelihood. And that's all you got, because it happened here, it happens everywhere.
And in other galaxies that are also alive, and that life will be...
Yeah, okay, so what if it is? What evidence do you have that it would do something different than what's happening in the ocean right now? The smartest thing in the ocean is a great white shark after 4 billion years. That's the best it can do. Is that good? Is that something worth pressing a button to initiate? No, I don't think so.
Continue to evolve, and that even if every living planet is wiped away right now, it'll crop up again in some as yet unforeseeable way.
Well, again, that's sort of irrelevant. It's like saying, well, because 10 other people have cancer and you have cancer, that you shouldn't be upset because 10 other people have cancer, so you should just die of cancer. You shouldn't kill yourself gracefully. You should just die like the rest of the other 10 people. This doesn't deal with the equation that right this second, right now, there's a bunch of neural networks, a bunch of brains being squished and denied their blood supply and suffering in their death throes. And that if we can reduce the number of those death throes per second, that hell, that's all win. Because we're not accomplishing anything. We're not really doing anything but fulfilling your own delusionary notions that you're accomplishing something. There's no evidence of your accomplishment. You can't put your accomplishment in a jar and show it to me, because it doesn't exist. I mean, any accomplishment besides cleaning up the mess other humans are making, or that nature's making. But beyond cleaning up the mess of helping other consciousnesses in trouble, you can't show me a bottle of any of this stuff that you're doing, that you're accomplishing. Besides satisfying a bunch of silly ambitions.
So the universe is a creative process, right? It's not just a graveyard. It's not just...
Yeah, it's a creative process by ideas and notions like natural selection. It's not a creative process by some brilliant strategy, by some artistic sensibility. It's a creative process by natural selection, which just means you throw everything into a pile and you force it to kill each other in a survival game to say, so one can declare itself the winner and then die of cancer. Why should I just assume that, oh, because it's creating something good? What part of the mechanism tells me that it's making something good besides survival machines, malicious, teeth-laden monsters? That's what it does. That's what the ocean's full of.
Just a bag of bones that's tumbling down a mountain. It's a gust of wind that's rising into the sky.
Okay, so why should we even bother with this kind of these metaphors? Is this what philosophers should do? Is veil reality in a bunch of silly metaphors that aren't even cartoons? I mean, the characters aren't even animals. They're not even. Your metaphor is so distant from reality. We're not fluffy clouds floating into the no, that's not what's happening here.
Forming clouds and lightning, and that's intensifying its experience of reality because it enjoys it. Now,
yeah, because it enjoys it. The universe enjoys it.
Just as there's a sort of circularity or a polarity between life and death.
So it's circular and polar. Whatever.
There is a polarity between pain and joy. They seem to meet at their extremes, right?
Says you. They don't seem to meet at all to me. They don't seem to have anything whatsoever to do with each other. They seem to be on a linear path, like get rid of my miseries and I get automatically happy. Isn't that sort of how it works? Get rid of my tensions, my worries, my concerns, my anythings, and the more blissful I get, the dumber I am, the happier I am. That cliche sort of does work, right? I mean, the ignorance of bliss, not a coincidence. But I mean, to say they're somehow connected, deprivations connected to satisfaction or being full, they're not connected in that they're both in the universe, but that's about the only connection you can make. They're exactly opposite circumstances. Need and non-need. They're not the same, they're very different.
The French call orgasm little death because it does seem that extreme pleasure somehow.
Well, they don't call it little cancer. They don't call it little broken leg. They don't call it little gallstone. They don't call it, I mean, this idea of death being just death, like, oh, I'm dead. Ooh, what a... No, being dead is nothing. Dying is something.
Meets at its extreme the essence of death, which is just total release of tension and anxiety, so that all that's left is a falling out of oneself.
Falling out of oneself. I mean, can you just say something like peace, peace of mind, tranquility, something else besides that mush?
So, I don't think antenatal thought is, in any sense, unproductive. I think it leads us into the essence of reality, but we can't get hung up on the pathos of it. And you can tell that someone's hung up on the pathos or the emotionality of death as a tragic loss when they pretend as if antinatalism is the most rational or logical argument. The argument.
I just don't know why. What's this obsession with death? It's not about death. It's about struggle. It's about burden. It's about pain and suffering. It's about enduring a hard life. It's about having to go to work every day, or all this other shit that the real world is doing. This burden, this tedium, this mind-numbing irritations that survival requires.
It considers all the evidence and so on. This isn't about rationality. This is about this is about our attitude to reality.
Whatever. So that should be enough right there, right? The philosophical conversation's over, the bullshit conversation begins, or whatever you want to say, right? I mean, when reality, isn't it? Rationality, isn't it? Reasonableness, isn't it? No, just make some shit up and let's just bounce a bunch of words at each other. Sorry, no sale. Philosophy. I mean, you should be fined for using the word philosophy when you talk as if philosophers should be thinking outside the boundaries of reasonable or rational. It's really not what philosophers should be doing.
Probably not about our reflection upon it. So I don't think we should pretend that it is objective judgment without any subjective bias that would lead us to a philosophy like antinatalism.
Objective judgment about a subjective bias that would lead us to antinatalism. Again, what is that? It's just logic. You recognize its bastard creation, and it's a bastard creation. You understand what the mechanism is. You understand how it's gaming you. It's putting the Cheeto in front of you, giving you a hunger for it to chase for no good reason but to replicate a molecule. And that's an important context. It's not a little fact, it's a big, giant fact. And you're just pretending it doesn't exist, and it's all about some sort of, well, as long as you feel the beauty. It's not about it's not about things you can feel attached to, even feel attached to the struggle of the little humans, and root for the humans. I mean, all of that is just the same as some idiot's ballpark passion for his little blue-suited team versus the red team. It's trivial nonsense. It isn't philosophy.
It is subjective bias to the extreme, just as some sort of optimistic, transcendent theism would be.
Oh, right. So now you're just going to claim that you're the middle ground. You're sorry. No sale. Not even close to a sale. You can't just keep playing this game like, oh, well, there's the extreme optimist over there, and there's the extreme pessimist over there, and therefore they're both wrong because I know that one's wrong, so that one must be wrong. I mean, that's just not an argument. You actually have to make the argument and explain how it's not reasonable to believe that life did evolve. That's just a parasitic infestation on the surface of the planet Earth, initiated by the incidental replication of a blob of chemistry that once it started, it had no way of ceasing, and it's been guided by an umpire that's blind and drunk. Explain how that's an unreasonable theory of what's happening on planet Earth. Before you sit there and put it in the, before you do your, it's the flip side of some dogmatic fable about how Henny Penny, laid the egg that cracked into the earth or something. Some fucking dogmatic loony story about a fucking god. Jesus.
Pathetic in the sense that it was totally an emotional involvement, a kind of faith without any, in fact, rational consideration or evidential reasoning underlying it.
Yeah, I don't know. Are you making a statement of some kind? I don't know. That was also rambly and bambly. Are you accusing the anti-natives of being irrational or unrational or unreasonable in some way? Well, then I guess you should explain what part of their underlying premises, their facts, are wrong. But you don't do that. You just make this veiled accusation that they must be wrong because I'm in the middle and I'm right. Well, fuck that.
So I think we need a mixture here of feeling and thinking.
Yeah, well, that's the real problem, right? That isn't philosophy, okay? You just critiqued bias, and now you're saying we need the bias. That's all you're saying. You're saying, yeah, we need to be in the middle because obviously if you look at it cold and hard with a clinical eye, you're not going to find any magic. And so, yeah, the only way you're going to see the magic is you're going to have to squint your eyes and twist your brain and maybe get a little stoned, because otherwise you're not going to see the magic. And that's called philosophy. Philosophy is take some drugs, bend your perception so you can make up a truth. And that's called philosophy now. That's what your generation is going to do with the word philosophy. I'm not going to give you a Nobel Prize for that.
Of sensing and intuiting. So, in that sense, one way to respond to a suicidal thought is with a little bit of religious optimism.
Yeah, whatever. Why would you need to respond to a suicidal thought with religious optimism? A lie? So you should respond with a lie. Well, that's nothing. You should respond with some sort of rational explanation that, okay, as long as you're sure it's nothing you can make out of it, well, then what's wrong with the suicidal thought? But if there's obviously some evidence you could present that, oh no, it isn't as bad as you think, well then present your evidence. But don't pretend just don't sit there and say, I have a pocket of evidence that could make you not be suicidal, but I'm not going to show it to you. I'm not going to explain it to you. I'm not going to, well, because I can't, because it's invisible, because I made it up, because it's the crap I live on. I eat it. The invisible fake lies that I feed myself to keep myself in the game. Because I'm a philosopher. Yeah, I don't think so. So anyway, that's probably enough. There's nowhere to go here. It doesn't get any better. It just gets, I think the ending is just more rambly, bambly, blah, 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 blah. And he ends with the invitation that he would like to have the discussion with Wayward Guy, and that would be good. I'd be interested to see how Wayward, he's a polite guy, he seems, anyway, so maybe he'll stay cool and calm and collected and try to deal with it in some way. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing I can do with any of this bibbly-babbly, hopey crap. I mean, you have to make an argument out of something real. Like you have to explain how the human condition, the condition of the animal organism, which is a designed condition to be hungry, okay, to play this role as this consuming machine to replicate a molecule and to do it in this competitive environment, how all of that nature can somehow be maintained without all the liabilities still being dragged into the future. What magic are you thinking you're going to apply to the human organism to get him to some better future? And do you really care? If the world just stayed right the way it is right now, is that good enough for you? Just little wars, just, little famines, lots of Holocausty things happening, a million or two people slaughtered a year. But okay, you'll buy that. That's acceptable numbers. Right? Right? But that's okay. If it just stayed that way, it's alright. That's good enough for you. That's a satisfactory enjoyment of the game. Good play. And I don't think you have any hope of maintaining what we have. I think it's going to get a hell of a lot worse. And it's never going to get any better. That's just a pipe dream. Smoking pipe dream.